live audience tonight and a virtual audience who are joining us on Zoom. So I want to welcome our live guests here at the headquarters of the Institute for Human-Centered Design. And I also want to welcome our colleagues who are joining us virtually online, who could be from anywhere in the world. We are very fortunate to have an audience that often is in 4 or 5 continents. So, and Coco has been a presenter and a designer in so many places in the world that I wouldn't be surprised if we have quite a number of people who are joining us from around the world this evening. So warm regards to everybody and a warm welcome. I'm Valerie Fletcher. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Human-Centered Design, where you are this evening, and where we welcome one of our longest friends and colleagues in this work, Coco Raynes. And we are celebrating the book that she created during COVID, a brilliant, extraordinary book that arrived in 2020. And we are giving it the life it deserves, or contributing to that life that it deserves tonight. And I want to say that I bought it in 2020 when it came out, and it has become my go-to book for every designer to whom we owe a gift of thanks. What better gift could we have than Coco's 50 years of design evolution? So we are delighted to have you this evening. And I want to...
It's the sound. She has a problem with the sound.
There's a problem with the sound? Pardon? It's on?
It's not on. It's not on.
Folks, you're saying it's working. Sorry, we've got a difference of opinion between one side of the room and the other.
Sounds good.
Sounds good? The microphone's on? No?
son presentation one day, and they were very happy, and the architects invited me to go for lunch. And I don't know why. There's a truck passing by, a stone reprographic, which would used to be Fredstone.
yeah.
And the guy said, he started this entire empire. I mean, we would pay huge amount every month to stone report to Charette and Fredstone, okay? And said, it started with one tricycle to do the delivery of the blueprints.
Yeah.
You know, I said, tricycle? This is what I need. So after lunch, I went to the bicycle exchange store in Harvard Square, and they didn't have a tricycle, but they said, we order you one from England. I said, perfect, a big one. I want a big tricycle. And I was very happy with my tricycle because I don't know how to go on a bicycle. So I needed a tricycle. I did not drive. A tricycle was a solution. And so the pictures do exist.
Coco, it's very un-French not to know how to ride a bike.
Our governors didn't want to run behind the bicycles. It was my dream, and it was never
happened. Okay.
granted.
We good? We're back on. All right, now let's move the slides forward and tell some
serious stuff.
stories. All right. Oh, please, we don't need another technical problem, guys. Jess? The slide is not. Jess? My slides are not advancing. If you can advance them for me, I'll just give you a thumbs up. Now do that. All right. Thank you, Jess. So we're going to do the thumbs up and you're going to move my slides. Very good. So this is actually like people are probably saying, what the heck is this? This is obviously a logo, and Coco has done many logos over time. This is a logo that is in keeping with tonight's
It's
theme.
appropriate for tonight.
Yes, it's
It is
the United
States Access Board. And it was a national competition. And of course, we won it. And why a star? Because if you have not noticed, in every elevators in the United States, the floor of access has a star. So non-blind visitors already know the symbol tactily. And so access made sense. And stars are part of the American flag, which meant we are part of the nation and we have to be taken care of. Well, that's it.
Just next slide, please. And the incarnation of the Raynes rail.
So I became fascinated very early with the problem of giving information to non-sighted visitors. And I had been a patient at the INEA Infirmary, and I always thought, what happens if I don't see? What do I want? And that was my solution. A few years later, it was in 73, I believe, I went to present my credential to the INEA, officially the Massachusetts INEA Infirmary, and I got the job. And I told the director and the person in charge, this is what we should do. We are going to use your existing handrail, put Braille behind, and put Braille on the signs as well. No, Braille, our patients are new blind. They don't read Braille. And it's a gimmick. We don't want Braille. I said, okay, you sure? Yes, we don't want Braille. All right, so we do the signage. And the next slide.
Next slide, yes.
And years later, the director changed. 10 years later, I was still working on that idea, but the director had changed. I went to see him and said, I would like to do the case study for the product at the INEA Infirmary. Fabulous, yes, right away. I give you 2 floors and we'll give you all the help you need, contact with the Mass Commission for the Blind, the Carroll Center for the Blind. They give us consultant to listen and hear, and with them we develop a special vocabulary with the system, very important. It's beyond the images, words, that it's a different vocabulary. And this is the commissioner of the Commission for the Blind, Massachusetts Commission, who came to test it himself, and he was delighted with it. He even spoke about it on television, and his boss in Washington told him to cool it. He was not allowed to advertise products. So we continued. Next. And so slowly, it was very well received, but I didn't go anywhere commercially with it. But I had time to develop it further. It becomes stainless steel. It becomes powder coated to be really vandal proof. Add audio system, multilingual, touch with just sensory contact. This was a museum of, what's it called? This museum, I forgot, in New York. Well, one of the big museums in New York. They had it, and I'm sorry, it's age, I forget. Next.
I think,
Yeah.
Jess, I think I'm back in business in terms of the clicker.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So we further kept developing the product, the vocabulary, and here it was installed in Connecticut in the park. And I started developing tactile images, also tactile rail, but not reverse, just for museum with tactile drawings. And with this in my hands, I started contacting museums.
Next.
Yeah. And the first, here nobody wanted to talk to me. I made attempt for public transportation in the subway. They kicked me out. In New York, they said yes, 57th Street, but they wanted me to pay for the installation. It was not in my means, etc., etc. Finally, the first musée was the Musée des Beaux-Arts in Calais. You can see the picture of the ugly, it was the ugliest museum in France. That way they couldn't go wrong. And when I saw it, I did find it insulting. I thought, they make me come to Boston to look at that stuff. And then when I realized that the statues were the originals of Rodin, the studies at 2/3 of the size, and some were the final one, I said, oh, wait a second. Yeah, it's perfect. We're going to do it. And here was the result. Clean, perfect. What was in, next, please.
I'm doing it now, Coco.
Yeah. We cleaned up everything. It was fun to move the statue like you would move sofas in your living room. I mean, when Rodin, it was fun. At the office, we loved it. And we created 2 rows of an avenue, like 2 rows of trees, something that tactily people could remember. Of course, it was a tactile map at the entrance of the exhibit. And enough space between each pedestal for a dog or a wheelchair to circumambulate. I mean, a person with a dog to circumambulate, I'm sorry. And that's the result. And the next one. And the minute it was inaugurated, the museum filled up, and some visitors with their dogs, some without. And it was wonderful to watch them participating and discussing specific pieces among themselves. Like you go to the museum with your friend and you discuss it. And that was for me the greatest achievement. Next, yeah. And then we got another museum, Musée des Beaux-Arts in Valenciennes. And this time we couldn't move the statues the way we wanted. The museography had been done already. And we could not touch everything. The curator of the director of the museum decided what could be touched, what could not be touched. And therefore we had a diagram that explained it. And we tactily escorted people with these maps through the galleries and pointed out what piece could be touched. And in the lower level, we had tag dots, another design that I developed because the sound when tapped with a cane, and it led people to different conference rooms. And one of my favorite pieces, it's in the Musée d'Arras, I believe, another museum, was Guillaume Lefrançois. That's his name. This is in 1446. I was delighted to learn that the ribbon coming out of his mouth was called a phylactere. And basically, Mickey Mouse had not invented anything, because it's exactly the same thing. And it come out of his mouth, and that's it.
And for those in the audience who may not be able to see the image, it's a remarkable image of a skeleton, essentially.
A recycling figure.
Yes, lying down, and has a cartoon, a bit of messaging coming out of his mouth.
Like a ribbon.
1446, this was created. And Coco interpreted this as a tactile experience. So it's a compelling image, no matter who you are. But the idea of offering it as a tactile experience was a big idea.
Yeah, it was so unusual, this reclining grave, the stone, that I thought that it had to be explained to everybody, to the public, to the sighted, non-sighted, to everybody, because I never seen anything like it, except on Mickey Mouse. So I designed the tactile drawing, and it's a huge, huge pedestal. It's about 2 meters long. And so that with a tactile diagram drawing, people could figure out first where were the feet, where was the head, and then do the tactile exploration of the statue, understanding the orientation of it. And another museum was Douai in France. And in France, the directors of the museum have complete authority about what can be done, what cannot be done. And even if the person who had invited me to come was paying for it, she was a big-time donor, philanthropist, the director, and even if the Ministère de la Culture had authorized the job, the curator had the right to say, no, we don't want it. So the person who invited me was very, very offended, very embarrassed. I said, no, wait, it's fabulous. We're going to do something totally different. We won't touch anything, fine. We won't touch the statues, but look, we are going to explain the ornamental religious architecture. And as the museum was in the monastery, and then an expansion of it in the chapel built in the 17th century, the ornamental style completely changed in between. And we translated it as architectural drawings that you could touch with the details.
Coco, you define design is born largely of constraints, or the best design is born of constraints. And again, another museum in another part of the world.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm taking too much time to explain. No,
It's a great story, and it's evolved from one another.
All this work brought us somewhere else. And that was the National Museum of Colombia in Bogota, and which is in a jail, ex-jail. And so it was a fortress, and so the walls are huge. And the archaeological exhibit were in the basement, which is where the cells were. And so we did put some small exhibit recessed in this renforcement, in this, Stephanie, what's the word for recessed windows? What do you call it?
Alcove?
Alcove? Okay. Like alcove, but it's not an alcove. I mean, so the niche of it is not for the. Huh? Well, okay, it's a recess, and the walls were so big in that jail that the recess you can put cows there. And so we did put them there so that nobody will trip into these exhibits. And we made some facsimile and drawings that said, okay, you can touch a facsimile, but pay attention, these are the characteristic of this specific culture. The nose adornment, the head adornment.
Coco, I think it's important that part of what you we're showing here is your move to be able to carve the glass, so that the tactile experience was on glass.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't.
It's an important milestone.
Tactile display. Glass, because it can be scrubbed, disinfected. If we put colors, when people can still perceive colors, it shows, and we put the color underneath so that they don't scratch and they're baked with the glass. So it's really bulletproof at the end. And it worked very well. And we put segment of ones well with audio, and they were multilingual. And in the 17th century gallery, it was not much to show, excepted two portraits of Bolivar. Now, these were not famous portraits by Goya or, okay, they were just anonymous. And one show Bolivar, the young general, very proud with himself, like this, body language, very pleased with himself, is the conquistador. And then at 60s, defeated with his arm crossed. And so I thought it would be fabulous to translate the body language of these two pictures to explain the voyage of Bolivar, his story. And so we had, it was like the drawings, the tactile drawings of that body language was accompanied by audio commentaries from his own journals in his own vocabulary, read by somebody else, of course. And so of both periods, so it was fabulous. At the inauguration, the First Lady was there, and she asked a young man who I did not know, he was blind by birth. I had never met him and never spoken to him before on what we were doing in the museum. And the First Lady asked him, "What do you understand?" And he did not know that it was the First Lady talking to him. He didn't bother to reply, and he just took the position of Bolivar like this. He perfectly understood what he was reading. And I was so moved. that I had tears in my eyes because I thought it was a big chance to translate paintings. And it worked.
Coco, what year was this?
What year? It must be 1990.
90?
Something like that.
So just making the point that the tactile renderings, tactile experience, multi-sensory experience in museums has become a very big priority, but not in 1990. So it's just important to note that you were inventing things that have become really something that people feel is critically important. But back then, it was brand new.
No, for me, it was a speculation that it should work. It will work, but you never know. Right? And so all this museum work got published everywhere, and it led us to Charles de Gaulle Airport. But it's a project that almost didn't happen. I told you the story. I was so obsessed with putting accessibility for visually impaired travelers in transportation. I was so disappointed going nowhere that I was fed up with it. And I thought, okay, let's go back to work normally, normal project, and then we'll forget about it. So when the architect of Charles de Gaulle contacted me he wanted information, I didn't even bother to reply for 2 months because I was fed up with everything. And then I decided, well, after all, I'm going to Paris in a few weeks. Why don't I contact him? And so immediately he organized a meeting, picked me up at the bottom of the airplane, put me in a room where it was a lot of people, everybody who had something to say about the accessibility of the airport. And I walked out 3 hours later with the contract to do the 3 airports. Accepted that after that, so we did the test and they were very happy with the test. And what happened is that it didn't happen because the roof of Terminal F collapsed. And so the money for accessibility disappeared, and that was the end of it. But the test was a major, huge information table, tactile, of course, on glass, trilingual, that say you are here and you are going to go to that desk inside through that gate, and somebody will receive you there. And the next slides.
And just a point, the circles, the tactile mounds on the floor that Coco had used also show up on the map. So you can find your way by tracking those.
Next slides will show it. So that's a detail of the map. There's a dot, 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 and they're actually on the floor as well. On this picture on the left, somebody is walking, touching the dots, and he has reached the door. And this was not a picture stage. They were, it was tested by blind travelers. Several organizations sent whoever they wanted, and they all approved it. I had nothing to do with the approval. And all this work brought us to Battery Park City. And that was great because everybody wanted the job. It was 6 million square feet of public facilities, of parks, and it was great.
So just for people who can't see it,
yes,
this is again a glass map. This is for wayfinding in a place that is challenging from a weather and natural conditions.
Yeah.
You're out of doors, you're against the river.
Yeah. We were asked just to give information, directional, to go to this neighborhood, and nothing more. But it was so much in that park to offer that I wanted it all on that map. So it's a huge table. It's about 2 meters long. And it's slanted, of course, so that it's comfortable to touch. The rain will come down, right? The map is tactile. This is Braille, of course. And I learned and I discovered that Battery Park City was the largest public outdoor museum in the United States. And nobody knows that. I mean, very few people know it. And so all these statues could be touched. And so we mark them on the map and explain what they were with Braille text and in English as well. And for people who didn't read Braille, it was audio messages in the veil that also protected the edge of the glass. And it was multilingual. And then we did what do you call it? A park with articulate special plants from the neighborhood, etc., etc. Botanical park, I'm sorry. And we drew tactily the plants and explained what was the characteristic. And it was nice. People can touch them, smell them, and understand the.
And one of the curious things about your work, Coco, is that it's incredibly tough. It's aesthetically so satisfying. It looks like it ought to be precious. And yet you have always done work that is indestructible, which I think is one of the characteristics that doesn't often get
Well, you have
forward.
to deal with reality that, you know, if they cannot shoot it, they will do something else to it, you know? So you have to brace yourself for maintenance, because maintenance is part of design. If you put something that is fantastic, it looks fantastic when you install it, come back 2 months later, look like hell, like it come out of the garbage. What was that all for? Maintenance is part of design. And if people don't think about it, they shouldn't design, period. So the map was very organized, explained, etc. It's tactile, and that same map translate this site, what looks complicated, it looks easy here. And we had designed pylons for information. You are here, the neighborhood, This was approved by Department of Transportation of New York. And if we go to the next one, no, there's not another one. I missed something. I lost something. Can you go back one? Oh, yeah. So sometimes design is entrapped by politics. I had told the clients that their street signage look awful. You see a backdoor place, it's always bent, there's always a truck that went into it, and you don't read it. So we told them we can do better than that. And we designed this street signage that get detail what was in that neighborhood, etc. And it glowed at night with that electricity. And it was approved by the DOT. And that's it. And so then the pylons were approved. And then at a presentation, somebody demanded a presentation, and it was some guy from SCGD there, because he was not the designer. We said, why should Battery Park City have signs different from the one from New York? So they got the same crap that in New York, and that was the end of it.
Now we're on to the next, super graphics.
So this comes from the 70s, okay, 75. So we started thinking in 72, it takes a while to put, no, 75 is the airplane, that was 74. So it started in 72. This is the Deaconess Hospital, the New England Deaconess, that had, can you go back one backwards? So no, forward. Okay, so in the 70s, you remember, Valerie, how we were screaming for attention at our age? Okay, now we are quiet and polite and everything. And so super graphics, that was it. Here I am, I want to be seen. Okay, and of course it was in Helvetica because Helvetica was the typeface to use. Okay, And, but now my philosophy of signage has always been that it must reflect, translate the client's personality and product. And here we're the Black & Decker World at Corporate Headquarters, which I got as a very young woman. I was selected. It didn't make everybody happy, but I was very happy to get it. And it had the architecture had curve, the building, several curves. So I wanted the panels, the exterior signage to reflect this architecture. So it has round curves, then we send it for prices to all the manufacturer. So then they put it in their catalog and everybody had it 2 years later. But I created it. And it was at a time where you couldn't make up things on computers. You had to make them physically and fake it with a photo. So we had built these signs, at the office, full size. We took them for a walk on the Toro Drive or Memorial Drive, whichever side we were on, and photograph it to present to the client, to the scale, right? Because we had got the contract to do the signage from the highway to the bathrooms. Okay. So, and the interior signage also reflect, of course, the client personality and product. It's in aluminum and black rubber. And they could do it then photographically in-house and be independent because it's a maintenance, be completely independent from manufacturers.
So Black & Decker is one of those examples of your work that aligns with your claim that great clients inspire great design.
Yes.
And Black & Decker was one of those clients.
Yes.
Fair?
Absolutely, because they did let me work in peace. And the result was they were very happy with the result. And then it was a second contract. But the first contract, I was very lucky. I was brought up by the architect. I was part of the team. And they were happy with the result, so no problem. So I was invited to compete for the corporate museum. And that was more complicated to compete, to present, and you know the story. You want to tell them the story? Do you want to?
Oh, no, I think
we have time?
No, you tell them the quick one. Tell them a quick version, but
Okay, very, very quick.
It is about this notion of the direct relationship to clients.
With the clients,
Yeah.
absolutely, very important. So that's the museum. I wanted this job made badly, and I was competing with all the firms, the selected firm in the United States for this. And my interview was at 9 o'clock in the morning. I get up, I don't know, in the middle of the night, I landed in Baltimore. I went to car, don't know the car, don't know the highway, nothing. And it was no map, nothing. And I'm so stressed about the interview, I miss exit. And it was nobody on the highway, it was so early. So I started backing up. And in seconds, it was a state trooper there. I said, were you trying to back up? So I looked at him and said, officer, is being lost an offense? So he looked at me and said, show me your papers. Okay, Massachusetts, I said, look, you're right, I shouldn't back up. But look, it's an interview of my life with Mr. Decker himself. And you have my destiny, my career in your hands. I want it. I need to be there. And it's in 15 minutes and I'm lost. I don't know where I am. And so it's my career in your decision. He said, do you know how to back up? I said, yeah. It's okay, back up and follow me. So put the, and I arrived and security, blah, blah, blah. And okay, and I present. At lunchtime, I'm in front of this, sitting in the cafeteria in front of Mr. Decker himself. And politely, I asked him, do you know when you will decide who is your consultant? I said, Coco, anybody who can convince the state troopers to escort her to an interview deserves a job. So I deserved the job and I worked directly with him and it was fabulous. And it was great. The museum, I learned everything about drills from their invention to, power drills to where we were at that time. And it was pre-computer, so we were making all the models full size at the office to photograph them. And
I think this is a hard thing for people to even imagine today.
but it was fabulous. We had such a good time.
And now we cross the world and we go to Pakistan.
Yeah, well, it's very important, a part of my design philosophy for signage. Not only it has to reflect the client personality, the products, if it's appropriate, blend with architecture, but also be compatible with the local traditions. And this was demonstrated in several projects. Is one that does it very well, I believe. It's Aga Khan University. And we simplified everything. This map, that map is very complicated. I said, okay, we'll have 3 avenues. 1, 2, 3, like Fifth Avenue, people will remember very easily, and then you will keep adding the addresses. Okay, both, no problem. But what was very important, I didn't want glass. I didn't want anything shiny, or it had to blend, be part of the hearse. And so it's in huge porcelain tiles, matte blasted, and it's blasted electronically, but it alludes to the carving tradition of stones in Iran, and Pakistan, and everywhere. Okay, so it was very successful, this. And sometimes we disobey the American Disability Act, even if we know them, we're supposed to, okay, observe. We were told to act according to the US disability standards and by ADA dictate. So by that, the sign has to be by the door, which in that case would have been totally stupid, because somebody non-sighted visitors would have to go in and out, in and out, in and out of this alcove to find the door. So I said, no, person is going to walk straight and the sign won't be by the door, but in the corridor. And that's it. And, and it was no argument about that.
And back to our neck of the woods, the university place at MIT.
So back to our neighborhood, MIT. This was a university place at MIT. It was the first glass signage. I am a sign designer who doesn't like signs. I feel that they destroy the interiors. You see patches and do this and do that and don't do that. And it's awful. And so I wanted them transparent in glass, not in plastic. And they're carved, they're elegant. And the architect worked very closely with us to light it properly. And then we even managed to get the signs by the elevators inlaid in the paneling, the wood paneling. And it says everything that has to be said, from the no smoking to go right, go left, whatever. And it's one piece. And then the Combined Jewish Philanthropies here in Boston were the first one to receive a glass sign with Braille. I was the first one in the country to put Braille on glass. It was very difficult to find a manufacturer trying to play with me. We succeeded. And years later, this is quite recent project, Tufts University, School of Dental Medicine, had a glass corridor, completely, no walls, glass. And I didn't want to stick signs on the glass. It looked like hell inside, and it didn't make sense. So the architect complained, but I convinced the dean that we will work it that way, that the panels will be sent to the manufacturer, blasted, have all the signs on it, all the information that is the donor recognition, everything, according to AD, at the right height, at the right thing, it has a braille, everything, and it's clean and it's part of this. And this is not a sign in the corridor.
So this is, again, for those that may not be able to see it, this is essentially a glass wall that has on its side
Integrated in the
integrated
surface.
information, a destination signage that is at the right height and has all the right features, but it's actually very differently done than is typical.
Yeah, but it's not destination. Is it destination? I mean, you are here at the door. It's a sign outside the door.
Identification.
The donors, everything. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so with this, it created this kind of vertical panels, which we continue to use for maybe the 5 major donors to honor them properly. And one of them was a doctor who wanted to name, asked to name the amphitheater after his mother. And when he saw the panel, what we did with the only picture he ever had of his mother, we had cut the husband, who had disappeared. It was the wedding day. And we put her full height on this vertical panel, laminated in the glass. And he was so moved that he gave another $1 million the night of the inauguration. And so the dean told me, Coco, you earned your fees, no problem. And basically, good signage, a good sign designer is there to clean up the mess left by others. And here it was 4,000 plaques.
Not Coco's work.
Some in the corridor, some in the basement, some, okay, everything got out. And we did one wall, and they are on one wall only. And this is a different, it's a continuation of the same idea, but different. That's at Bastet, not Tufts. It has 2 layers of glass. We keep adding every year 2 more panels with the names, but so that it will be no empty surfaces. There is an inspirational quote, I think from Einstein, I believe. And
Onto
this
your
brings us to
parking
Boston.
sign.
Hmm?
Onto your parking sign.
Oh, parking sign, yeah. Somebody here worked with me on it, I think. I do so. And good design always emerge from a problem. It's there to solve a problem, not to please the designer, but to respond to specific situations. And here it was a clearance of this parking. It's a Nike building in Boston. And it was no clearance. So the sign appeared to be very small. And with all the traffic on Newbury Street and Clarendon, it's Clarendon or another, etc. The sign, it was going to be so small. I said, we're going to make it fat, big. So optically, it will have a presence. And it became this fabulous.
It's 3-dimensional, again, for people who may not be able to see it. It's very important.
Give it depth. So the depth made it a 3-dimensional, what do you call it? Cylinder, coin? It's not a coin, it's a sculpture.
Colored light.
Mhm.
Colored light. Colored light holds.
Yes, but it's 3-dimensional and
Yes.
very, so
Fat.
the optical illusion of gave it an importance to the sign not to be missed, and of course it's in light, etc. And the architect was delighted, worked with us on the attachment that mimic his adornment on the facade. And so it's very industrial, very strong. And we continue this attachment inside the building, so that the signage is incorporated in the interior architecture, in the architecture finish. And that worked very well. And these are two buildings that you all know. One is State Street building, and one is Boston Architectural College, BAC. One is a skyscraper, and one is, they consider it an historic building in Boston.
Former police station.
What?
A former police station.
Yes, a former police station, no.
No, the fire station is
Fire
next door.
station.
Next door is the fire station. This was the police.
Oh, a police station. Well, big
I was the
cars.
client,
No,
Coco.
no, of course you were the client. And yeah, absolutely. So, but they call it an architecture, historic building. It's not Versailles, huh? It's a very small thing. But for me, there were the same problems, because both signs were retrofitted. The developer State Street had finished the signage inside the building, everything was finished, and all of a sudden State Street leased it. And he come back and he said, you have to design the sign on top of the building. Okay, that was very difficult because it was not planned. And the letters are 3 floors high. And so we modified the logo without saying anything to the client. Better not to talk, they wouldn't have noticed anyway. And so we could attach the sign. Okay, perfect. It's holding, it never fell off, perfect. Then my client, Valérie Fletcher, invited me to design the sign of the BAC building. So I did the design, I bring it to the BRA, Boston Redevelopment Authority. And they said, what do you want? I need a permit for a sign on a building. We don't want signs on buildings. I said, well, what about State Street? That's different. That's very well done. I said, well, I'm the designer. Okay, come in. Okay. So they warned me, no drilling on the stones, no drilling in the mortar, just as little as possible. And basically don't touch the building. Okay. So, and that's the result of the problem. If we show the next one, you will understand it better. So that sign floats away from the building because we couldn't touch the building. It doesn't drill the stone, minimum, just the mortar, and from time to time only. And because we couldn't attach every letter individually to the stone, they float on this support, which is a blasted glass. And voila, the result, it was very harmonious, and the client was happy.
The client was happy. It's true. Yes. Oh my goodness, is that it?
And I think that this was the last slide. Correct?
Coco, thank you. Thank you.
My
But Coco is so generous to give so much credit to clients and so much credit to the manufacturers that she's worked with. She's talked into doing things they'd never invented before, talked into doing things that they probably told her impossible. And she has, throughout this period, throughout her entire career, never opted to work with a big company. She's always had a very small team. What's the largest group of people you ever had?
5, 6.
So all of this work with a tiny crew, and many of these people are great successes. They went on to basically create their own design entities, but there's always been this mini hub of tremendous invention and creativity in the work that you've done. And there's no big company to close. There was no major shutting of the doors, but it's
This
extraordinary.
young man here, we started at my office as an intern. He had never done anything. And he learned a lot. And then he went to work differently and did a very big career.
Thank you for coming. But I think that's a testament to a very extraordinary story, that so much of what we know of environmental graphics comes out of gigantic firms.
They talk a lot. They don't do much. And they copy. That's it.
Questions from the audience before we let you have a drink and something to eat. Please.
There's a Boston Architectural College. What are you drilling into on building to mount that sign?
It's the mortar between the stone.
Grout.
Yes, a grout. Yeah.
We had an we had an architectural consultant for historic preservation who approved every step. Jess. Please, let us know, what is it?
I didn't understand.
Does the client requires there a requirement for the maintenance of environmental graphics as standard fare?
No, we planned for it. We design, or used to, because I'm on strike now. I don't do anything. We design system that can be maintained, but I am not in charge of cleaning. In fact, you were talking about the BAC, that sign. It used to glow like a diamond on it was beautiful. You would look at it now, it looks gray, like that. But I'm not in charge of cleaning, okay? I'm not in charge of changing the light bulb 5 years later, 10 years later. So signs have to be maintained.
So maintenance is
Sometimes.
maintenance is part of it, I think, but it's also the sort of long-term survival of the product that's really important. And I don't know if clients have insisted on that. I know you're respectful of that important priority.
Yes, usually interior signage doesn't demand maintenance, accepted when they change, and the insert should change as well, or the sign should change. But if not, exterior signage that we like request lighting, people have to change the light bulbs or whatever is involved, or dust it from time to time. I'm not going to do it.
Any last questions, please?
I wonder, Coco, when you have a commission something like BAC and you're presenting the work to them, are you providing them one solution saying this is your answer, or do you give them options?
Usually options, but in the BAC, it was only one solution. And it was nothing else we could have done that made sense to me. And I did show it to you.
Yes.
You liked it. I went to see the dean,
The president.
the president of the BAC, and I knew him a bit professionally, and he said, Coco, I'm very busy. You do what you want, and I see you at inauguration. I said, okay, bye. And that was it. This is when the client trusts you, okay? But that was great. Okay? He trusted me, didn't care. It was not his problem.
And we were so limited, and you couldn't attach the letters directly to the building. So it was a narrow set of solutions. Mary, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I love the tactile image of what's in the painting or what you're showing. It sounds wonderful. But I'm also, that was just a comment. But my question is, not being able to see the slides, I'm wondering, engraving in the glass, when that's been done, is it a different color, so there's some visual contrast between the clear glass and the lettering?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. An excellent question because it wasn't clear that there's color. Explain the use of color in the glass that you've used for tactile, which is
Yes.
blasted, but very colorful.
We always put used to, because again, I'm on strike now, put the colors under the glass. So people won't play with a knife to scratch it, to see if it comes out, etc., etc. So, but it's very vivid and it is baked in with a glass. And so it vitrified.
Yeah,
So it's tough. And on the surface, very often, in addition to the tactile, to the braille, of course, the lettering is tactile, but it has a contrast.
Wonderful.
And white would reads very well on the glass.
Right.
And so, but this is back, so it become part of the glass.
Right.
So there's always a big contrast, and it depends of the situation. Sometimes we highlight areas also on the surface, but we always try to disinvite people of scratching it for the pleasure of scratching it.
And it's literally impossible to scrape the paint
Right.
because it's a glass sandwich. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thank you for asking that, Mary. Really important point, sir.
You mentioned your book that you worked for a time for Muriel Cooper, design director of MIT Press. I'm interested if you picked up anything from her or any other interesting stories.
Muriel Cooper, she was the first person in Boston, in Cambridge, to give me a chance to work. And I went to see her. She gave me 2 cover jackets to design. Went back to these letters with the cover jackets, approved. I got 3 more. And it was a source of income and pleasure for me. It was great to work with her. First, she's a very good designer. She had very good taste and she liked what I was doing. So it was great. And so it started with few book jackets and then I was getting up the collection. And when I assembled the book, I did put in the book only the book jacket that I could find, but it's 50 years later. And you know, you move offices and things disappear, you don't keep everything, the slides disappear. So there is a few, and you know what? That book, it's because of the jackets of Muriel Cooper. Because what happened is that on one day, my brother sent me something he had found in the internet about a comment from somebody, a scientist, about a book jacket who was talking about the sciences of color, something like that. And I designed the book jacket of that book. And he thought it was so extraordinary. And he put it on I don't know which system, but I'm not on the computer. On the internet, I'm never there. So, and me, I had so he was really happy about finding this book cover, and it was fantastic. And me, I had forgotten this book design completely, but it was mine, I know. It had my name on it, but I'd forgotten about it. And so I thought, what else has been forgotten by me? And so I started cleaning all the drawers and all the files and the portfolios and everything I could find during COVID, and here's the result, the book.
Jess, you have a comment or a question from the invisible audience. Ooh,
Well,
what was the most significant project in your design journey?
Black and Decker,
Really?
because I was a very young woman. I got the world headquarters of Black and Decker, and people were not pleased that I was the one who got it with a small office. In fact, one day, Mr. Decker asked me, Coco, where are your headquarters? And I started laughing, but laughing. He said, what did I say so funny? I said, Mr. Decker, you're talking to me equal to equal. You have 10,000 employees. I have 5. It's the same. When you're at the top, you're alone. I'm talking to you equal to equal. So it was
Thank you, Jess.
the pleasure. And then I ended up on the museum working directly with him because he was the one who knew the story. And so I got to know him a little bit. It was extraordinary to work with him. And so when you establish such contact, professional friendship with a client, it was delightful. So because of this, Muriel Cooper was fantastic to work with because she trusted me. And if she needed something in 3 hours, she will get it back in 3 hours. I never had a job refused from her or modified or anything. That was very significant. And then the chance to do the museums in France, because it opened the doors to blind visitors, and it started, and then it was copied everywhere, but I opened the path, and that was very satisfying to have done something intelligent.
Thank you, Coco. One last question. Do we have one last question? Please. Coco's great friend, introduce yourself.
Stephanie Malice, FAIA.
I met Coco about 40 years ago. She came to New
More
York.
than that.
How old is Benjamin?
Benjamin, how old is Benjamin?
She's got to ask his wife how old he is.
So it was 49 years ago. Because I was pregnant to the teeth, I came to see you.
I was interviewing Coco. She was pregnant, so I know it was 49 years ago.
Yeah.
I was the head of a group doing hospital design. And somehow we got along in the interview, and I hired her, and she proceeded to work on Staten Island Hospital. I guess at that time it was part of the super graphic world, but it was a big project. And there were 2 women heading up this endeavor. It was very wonderful. And then when I came back to graduate school at in Cambridge, Coco was there. She's about the only one I worked with over all this time. We're still close. But my question was,
Thank you,
what
Stephanie.
what advice would you give to somebody that's trying to follow in your footsteps, or sees this and says, gee, I really love this. What do I do now?
I will ask them to stop thinking that the computer is going to design. Okay? Because there's a it's, the computer does not design things. They have to think a little bit, it would help. And to think how people are going to function, how it's going to be maintained, how is it going to be manufactured or what? But people copy things and they see in the computer design, it's accidental design. And for me, means nothing. I don't know if you agree with that, but it's a generation gap.
And common sense.
Because me, I cannot touch the computer, it's a mess. If I touch anything, it's a disaster. I used to sit down next to everybody who was in a good mood that day and say, move it there, make it bigger, do this, do that. And then at the end of the day, I had exactly what I wanted, but I wouldn't play the piano myself.
And I think it's just important to note, great question, Stephanie. I think that Coco is proof that it is possible to do a career of 50 years without replicating for ease of, doing the job. That the level of invention,
It-
every job was so unique. And you're
Thank you.
building ideas, but you're not replicating the same solutions
Never.
over and over again.
Never, and never copying.
And other than the book jackets, we all are thankful that you actually documented damn near everything for 50 years.
It's, some is there, some is lost, some, but I kept what I could. There's a big difference between creating and copying. You know that, Stephanie. When people copy your buildings, and your work, it's completely different. I mean, and if not, you're not a designer, and if not, it's not fit exactly the client, the problem to solve, the maintenance that they can have or don't have.
And if I could, we'll close, but let me actually quote you. How to forgo the delicious moment when nothing can be added or deleted, to experience the unique satisfaction when the design reaches its final form, the I've got it feeling. I can be the perfect spacing and typography, the utmost simplicity of a logo, or the harmony of an interior space. It is done, there is no return, and we are delighted.
Thank you.